Hey, what do you know? The first non-TBT. So I guess we've done like 4 or 5 games now, and in all of them, you've had economic problems that were so severe that the other problems were kind of not worth looking at. In most of the games, it was that you just didn't have any workers. In some of the games, you had idle workers. And most of the games, and actually every single one of the games now, you've had 3 racks at like 20 minutes into the game, which is ridiculous. You need like probably 10 racks at that point. So your money just keeps climbing and climbing, and you can't spend it because you didn't make enough racks. You've typically done really well spending all your gas, which I'm surprised by. Most people have the opposite problem, but, you know, it's kind of cool. At this point, I'm confused about this build. You told me about this build in your email. You're like, I'm going to try to get 2 Marauders, 2 Hellions, and make a push at like 5.5. And I'm like, why would you ever do that? You realize it takes a full minute to get across the field. Oh, actually, you're doing your TBT build in this TVZ game. So you're just doing the exact same build. I think that's good. I love when people find one build that works for them in all 3 matchups, because then you can, like, the more things you can not have to think about, the better you're always going to do on your macro. And your macro is what wins you games. So, you know, block out distractions, baby. So we're looking for 30 workers, and you have 30 workers. This is great. So in all the other games, you've been messing up at about 8 minutes. You've always done great until 8 minutes. Well, not always. Most of the time you do great until 8 minutes, and then you start thinking about fighting, and you start to screw up. Now, one thing worth mentioning is you're expanding extremely late. TVZ is the only matchup where everybody expands early or all-ins, right? Because Zergs can get so much money if you don't either kill them quickly or get a bunch of money of your own. You basically lose. So I'm worried about you, buddy. Luckily for you, it looks like he's going extremely low econ as well, but it's 9:30. You got 32 workers on one base, and TVZ, if I watched this game, I would say, I mean, if this was like Nick playing, I would say, all right, he's going to all in right now. And then I would look at the spending. Hang on a second. We're going to wait until 10 minutes. Okay, you lost 1 worker. So at 10 minutes on one command center, you want 37 workers. You're at 34, including the dead one. That's bad. You missed 3 workers, but it's not really bad. It's like average bad, so which is actually quite good. I don't know if that made sense, but hopefully you get it. Basically, you did fine, but I wish you'd had a second command center and therefore done way, way better. The big thing that we're going to see in a second after I take a drink, because my voice is going out. You ready for it? I'm hitting this S button. 2150 plus this 400. So 2650. You've got $1,000 in the bank, and you're $1,000 behind benchmark, right? Just like every other game, you don't have enough racks, or you're not using the racks you have consistently enough, so you end up with a tiny army at 10 minutes. In all of the games I've seen so far, you've never had an army bigger than you have right now, which is 2,600, which is tiny, really tiny. I should probably watch one of your TVPs. But you're just very consistently not getting a very big army. And in this game, when you one-based until 9 minutes, you better have a really big army at 10 minutes. There is no excuse not to have a huge army right now, because you've got nothing to waste your money on, right? Like, if you only have production facilities, you don't even have an engineering bay, no command center, nothing. Like, all you have is the ability to make units. So why didn't you make enough units, man? That's the thing. So now your gas is crazy high. In TVZ, you're doing like a TVP build, basically. Banshee tank marine with really late upgrades. I don't know. This is just not a TVZ build. This isn't going to work. I mean, obviously your opponent might suck too. You got to realize that you're going to win 50% of your games, even if you do something ridiculous. So it's not a good judge of whether or not this was ridiculous to say, well, I won, right? Because, again, did you win against a Masters player? Did you win against a Grandmaster? No, you won against a Silver guy. So you could have beat him with Mass Reapers. I don't know. So 14 minutes, this is when you should have 200 unit space. If you are doing a build where you're not going to leave your base, you have no intention of scouting, attacking, defending, anything. All you're doing is staring at your base. 14 minutes is when you should have 200 unit space. With like 1-1 upgrades and 2-2 almost done. So really, let's look at cute little pictures. Where are my pictures? Pictures. Oh, that's not a picture. How do I change to the different picture? Here we go. 14 minutes, 7,500 is one. This is if you made only one base and you just built army, you'd have 7,500. If you got two bases and you're doing uber ups, you should have 7,500. If you're doing 4 OC on two bases, you should have 200 unit space and 9,000. If you're doing 3 OC, which is much more common than 4 OC nowadays, then you should probably also be, you should definitely be at 200 unit space. You should also have about 9,000 bucks. So we're looking for 7,000 if you're doing kind of bad, and we're looking for 9,000 if you're doing really, really good. And we see 3,600 plus this is what, 3, 4, 5. So well, I don't know why you're getting cloaked. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So plus 17. So you had 5,600. So you're about $2,500 off of the one base benchmark. The one base benchmark, not even the two base benchmark. So it's not good, buddy. It's not good. And obviously, to be $2,000 off the one base benchmark, when you're mining more than a one base player would mine, you got to say, well, that can't be right? Show me the reasoning behind that. Okay, the reasoning behind that is you got an additional 20 SCVs. That's $1,000. You got an additional 550 here and 150 here and 400 here. So that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that's $2,300. So that's where all your money went. That should have been in army, right? So if you were one basing, and actually you would have had a $3,000 larger army if you were one basing at this point. If you're two basing, obviously you'd still spend all this money, but you'd get so much more income than you'd still you would still have this $7,500 to $9,000 army at this point. So what you did, this is what I was saying in the email, is you did a middle of the road, right? You took a late expo, but you also didn't one base. So one base has the advantage that you don't spend any money on the command center or the the refinery or the SCVs. So all that money gets to be dumped into troops instead. So you can hit 7,500. A fast expansion has the advantage that you get a bunch of extra money. So even though you're wasting money, you can still hit that 7,500. But this middle of the road thing where you both don't expand quickly and do expand at some point, very bad. You end up with this teeny tiny army, not very useful. So again, it's easy for me to say you should be able to get this army size at a certain time, but a lot of people's gut reaction to that is going to be, well, I'm not in Masters League. I got a big army. I'm happy with the army I got. Show me how to use it better. And that's why it's a really good tool for you personally to hit these benchmarks. Prove to yourself, yes, I can have an army that big. Right? And then go into the unit tester and take what you see your opponents having at that specific time and take the giant army that you should have and just move it against his army. Don't even look at it. Don't micro anything. And if your army can kill his army, then say, all right, I don't have to look at my army or anything. If I make this army, even if I use it terribly, I'll win this game. So now you can focus all your energy on just getting that army. You don't even have to use it anymore. You just get it, and then you win. And that's what I really want you to do, because you have a lot of actions going on in this game where you've never fought him. You've never done anything at all. Like, if we look at what you have selected, you're constantly like selecting banshees, selecting tanks, selecting blah. You just selected your engineering bays. Notice that they were idle. Notice that you have $1 billion that you could easily get more upgrades and just said, okay, I have idle engineering base. You selected 3 command centers and said, okay, all 3 of these are idle. Okay, I'm going to move on. Like, why do you select things if you're not going to use them? I don't know. That's called tapping. That's something people do that drives me nuts. Is like, I'm going to select my factory. It's idle. All right, I'm going to go off and do, like, no, it's idle. You should do something about that. If you selected your factory and it's idle, make something in it. Anyway, yeah. You also have this habit of queuing stuff, which I think is actually a good habit to get into in general. At when you have an APM of 36, you really have to be queuing stuff, or else you're not going to win any games. But it's like, I don't know, 36 APM is less than half of mine, and I don't have enough APM to both move my army constantly and macro. If I only macro, if I stare at my base and do nothing but macro, I can't macro perfectly off 3 bases. I can macro perfectly off 1 base, I can macro okay off 2 bases, but once I get up above 2 bases, I'm like, it takes all of my focus just to macro okay. My money gets up to thousands, even if I'm playing against a very easy AI. Macro is hard, especially the bigger your infrastructure gets, the harder macro is for Terran players. If you want to see easy macro, man, go play Zerg. But anyway, so you can't afford to be spending time on other things, is my point. Macro is hard even for me with double your APM. With half my APM, I would only macro. I would never do a single other thing. If I wanted to win games. Obviously, I probably wouldn't do that because I'd be like, you know what, screw it, I can't win games, I'm just going to have fun, and then I'd just do what you're doing. But if you really want to improve, first step is to get like perfect macro. Perfect macro. And the key to that is to stop doing things that are not macroing. So he beat you with Hydralisk. This is what I'm saying. Oh, I don't even think he's gonna win. I think you're gonna kick his butt because Hydras are invalid as a unit. But yeah, nobody fought at all until 14 minutes. A Zerg can have 200 unit space at 13 minutes, right? Let's look at what you had at 13 minutes. So neither of you scouts each other, neither of you interacts with each other, nobody has to attack, nobody has to defend. So we go on and on and on and on, and we say, alright, assuming that he is the best Zerg player in the world, or even just anyone platinum or above and has read a build and is just following that build order perfectly, he should have 200 unit space right now. You have 90. That's more than double. You lose. So that's what I'm saying. Macro, at this point, the only thing that should matter to you is whether or not you can get a really big army, because your army could be literally twice as big as it is right now. And if you had an army twice as big as you have right now, you would have beaten this guy by A-moving. You wouldn't have had to do a single thing. You wouldn't have had to worry about which units you make. You could have beat him with Mass Hellion. You could have beat him with Mass Tank. You could have beat him with Mass Thor. You could have beat him with Mass Marine. You could have beat him with Mass Marauder. You could have beat him with Mass anything. If you hit 200 unit space at 14 minutes when he has 90, you win because you have double his unit space. All right, I think I've said that enough. I don't really want to watch the end of the game because, again, we already know what the problem is. You know, you take these units, you put them against his units, they win, they lose. It doesn't matter because you didn't have it, when you're competing against yourself. If you lose the fight against yourself, I don't care if you win the fight against him, right? So I guess I should, I don't know, I feel kind of obligated to watch at least one of these games. This one's only 30 minutes. Oh, so you're doing great. He's making completely horrible units and just suiciding them into pre-siege tanks. Even this fight, where you get a really bad arc and just kind of A-move into him, you do great because Hydras are terrible. Upgraded Marines, it's 20 minutes in, and you went double eBay to focus on upgrades, and you're 1-1 with 2-2 just starting at 20 minutes. So, again, complicated things like I'm going to go for upgraded Marines with Hellions, with a Raven, with Siege Tanks, with Vikings, with a third. it's too much for you to think about. You have $3,800 in the bank, and you haven't even started your 2-2 yet. You got to recognize that your APM is 36. You got to recognize that you can do less than half of the amount of things that the people that you watch are doing. And you got to pick the most important half, right? If you can only do half the stuff that needs to be done, pick the most important half. And the most important half is not to get a Raven, is not to place a PDD, is not to harass him with Cloaked Banshees. You know? The most important thing is to get 200 unit space of units that can be A-moved, because siege tanks need to be slowly crawled forward. That takes a lot of APM that you don't have. That would be directly taking APM away from your ability to macro. So I'm not saying don't get siege tanks, but I am saying, I would say until you're out of Silver League, you probably don't need siege tanks. Maybe in TVZ you could go like mass siege tank Thor Hellion with no air units at all. I think that'd be okay. You gotta kind of pick. Like, you can either go mass Marines with upgrades and medevacs, or you can go mass siege tank with upgrades and Thors and Hellions. Or you just gotta pick a composition and that only involves either 2 or 3 units, and do that. Because making 7 units and trying to figure out how to use them all, it's not going to work for you until your APM gets higher. And your APM isn't going to get higher until you can make a giant freaking army really consistently and really well. Because that by itself uses a bunch of APM. And then the more you do it over and over, the more it becomes kind of second nature, and then the more extra actions you have to spare on moving your stuff around. Like right now, I don't feel like you're ever saying, "Oh, I don't have the APM to do what I want to do." I feel like your economy is so small and your money is piling up so much that your list of things that you can do is kind of small. I mean, you don't have a ton of buildings. You can't really make a ton of units. I don't know. Anyway, he's literally massing Hydras. I don't feel like watching a game of mass Hydras is a valid thing to do. Mass Hydras isn't a real strategy. It only wins if he gets more money than you or a bigger army than you, and you had $8,000 billion in the bank, so you got a bigger army than you, not because you got more money, but because you just didn't spend your money. So yeah, that's what's going on there.